this is my OMG interview. Okay, so we're here to talk about the Banana Republic show, which is Cause and Effect Organization's biannual fundraiser that's going to be held on September 24th at the Queen's Hall from 6 to 8:30 p.m. featuring performances from David Rudder and myself. So Cause and Effect Organization was formed in 2013 by my husband Francis Escayg, and it was formed because of one particular question we were asked by our son's pediatrician. We have a 13-year-old son who is severely disabled, and Dr. David Bratt, who's his pediatrician, asked the question, have you all thought about what you all will do with him, Isaiah, when he's 18? And that planted a seed in my husband's head that just wouldn't go away, a whole thought process, of course. And so he went back to school, did a master's in creative design entrepreneurship with a plan to, in the long term, set up sustainable assisted living communities for persons with disabilities and their families. So Cause and Effect was formed in 2013 to combat apathy and ignorance about disabilities in our society, with a view to transforming the society's perspective about disabilities. I think our growth has been very organic, mainly because our NGO is a bit different in the sense that the cause is existential. Disabilities is something that has existed for over 50-something years in Trinidad and Tobago, and the needs of this particular sector have been largely ignored. And of course, with time, the passage of time and information coming to light more and more with the internet age, with people traveling and being able to see what's available in other countries, as parents, it made us really stop and take a look around at what exists in our country and, of course, the future. And so because my husband is a filmmaker, music producer, and published author, and because I'm a singer-songwriter, and because we're also parents of a child who's disabled, it really gives us a bit of a bird's eye perspective on everything to do with the development of disabilities in Trinidad and Tobago. And so it has shaped our approach and our growth in a very organic way, because as a creative, you're constantly creating something out of nothing. That's what being creative is. You know, a seed is planted, and you may think about something for a very long time until eventually you arrive at the point where you find a solution to a problem, you write a song, you make a movie, whatever it might be. And so things started off a little bit slow with us, I will say. But over time, as we had more and more experiences, interaction with parents and caregivers and medical personnel, paramedical personnel in the sector, educators, it started to really shape in our minds what the narrative needs to be about disabilities in order to influence the public positively about disabilities. Because what we're trying to do is build bridges. You cannot have a society where you're asking people to embrace you and say, I understand your needs, or I'm going to provide for you what it is you need to thrive in that society, if sometimes people are not quite able to grasp exactly why it is you need what you need. It may seem obvious, it may seem that if somebody is disabled, they may require this and that and the other, from health into education, into social integration, to live a full life and to thrive like anyone else. But you would be surprised at how not obvious that is to many persons. From government officials straight down to technocrats, to corporations, to medical personnel sometimes, to special educators, to siblings, families. It impacts on people's lives in so many ways. Okay, so basically, to answer the main question, I will say we have grown organically. It's been a slow process, but it's been a fulfilling one. And I would say we're into our 4th year of existence, and we had a 5-year rollout plan. And in this 3rd into our 4th year, we were able to really establish exactly who cause and effect is, in a sense, based on the work that we started putting out. What we did was last October, we started a series that was featured in the Woman Express magazine called the Lioness series. And that series came about because I decided that I wanted to feature women who were either women who lived with disabilities or mothers of children with disabilities, in addition to women in the disability sector who have made significant contributions to the sector. I wanted them to shape the narrative. And so I asked every person to tell their own story in their own words about how their lives have been impacted by their interactions with their children, with themselves, with the children they've treated in the disability sector, in order to humanize children with disabilities, persons with disabilities, adults with disabilities, to the general public. And so that series went really well, and then we moved on to something called the Foot Soldier series that featured professionals in the sector. Fortunately, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but so far the series both series have only featured women. There are men in the sector, and so we have a Lion series that we're launching hopefully this October. We're working hard at getting it launched by October. We're working on a film called Soldier, which follows a family, our family basically. It's a docu-film about disabilities and how the society impacts on a family with disabilities, and how disabilities in itself has impacted on the growth and journey of our family as a unit, as we attempt to shift the future in Trinidad and Tobago for not just our son, but for all children with disabilities in the future. And that is how we have grown organically. The intention is, one, to humanize to persons without disabilities, persons with disabilities, because a lot of times persons with disabilities tend to look at persons with disabilities in one of a few ways. They are either in awe of some persons with disabilities who may be cognitively fine but physically unable to care for themselves, but are very brilliant people and who are attempting to live full lives. They may be looking at children with disabilities as subhuman, as children who should not even be alive, and who are a waste of resources and time and money. There are people like that who do believe that children with disabilities should be put down at birth. And while we cannot change every single person's mind about different classifications of persons with disabilities in this sector, we have to try. We have to try and build bridges. In the same way, there was a civil rights era and people fighting for the rights of women, for gender equality, gender rights. In the same way, you had people fighting for gay rights. In a sense, cause and effect is attempting to usher in to Trinidad and Tobago what we refer to as the social model. And in the social model, the thought process in the society is that the society is what enables or disables an individual, And so we are working on a series called the ABCs of Disabilities for social media and television. And those are little 1-minute segments that feature doctors, paramedical specialists who are therapists, special educators, self-advocates, parents, explaining details of disabilities, so that the public can begin to really understand that a child with a disability is not demon-possessed, and that if we provide them with all the tools necessary for them to thrive, that they can possibly live independent lives, and that for the ones who can, and that they are no less deserving of being treated with dignity and respect than what we may refer to as a typical child or a typical human being. So that's what we're attempting to do, to build bridges. So it's humanizing persons with disabilities, to the public, and building bridges between those with and those without disabilities. It affects everything. It affects how policy and legislation is drafted, how legislation is implemented. We apparently, Trinidad and Tobago signed on to the United Nations Convention on the Rights for Persons with Disabilities in 2015. We are yet to see a report that was supposed to be sent out to the United Nations in June of this year. By June of this year, yeah. It was never sent, and there was no forthcoming explanation about why it was not sent. That report would basically state what progress we've made in implementing supports, systemic supports for persons with disabilities, but we don't know. So we have to do what we have to do as parents and as activists to shift things to get to where we want them to get to. Yeah. With all our projects, we have very little funding because I think what we're attempting to do is something that is, because it's existential, as I previously said, sometimes people get it and sometimes they don't. A lot of times I don't know if it is that people don't get it or if it is that they simply do not care. But I think there are many people who do care. And so this is where the Banana Republic show comes in. So biannually we do a major fundraiser. Previously we would do it at the Little Carib Theatre, but we decided this year that we wanted to make our event a lot bigger. And so we approached King David Rudder about performing at our fundraiser, and he agreed to do it. And so we're taking it to the Queen's Hall, and he's going to be performing all of his hits. We specifically requested for his fans that he perform all of his hits. And so he's performing all of his hits, and in addition to him, I'm going to be performing. In a sense, I return to the stage every 2 years now because I am the cause ambassador for our organization. So I am returning to the stage with a full band, a brass section, my background vocalist. It's going to be an awesome show. The music, I will say, is socio-political in nature, but we do talk about everything under the sun. In a sense, in the way that Calypso does it, which is its commentary, and it's very relevant to what's happening here, but it's against a soul backdrop, in a sense, but distinctly Caribbean. It is very distinctly Caribbean, and the brass in the band is what makes it that way. It is distinctly Caribbean. And I'm really excited about this show because I absolutely love to perform. I know it's where I belong. It is just one part of what I was born to do, but disabilities activism is the main thing I will say in my life now. But everything else, the music, the film, the series that we're producing, somehow they all intertwine, they all come together, and bam, you have a really nice synergy and a beautiful explosion that happens that it just makes people feel good, So it's a show that is going to be dynamic and intimate all at once. inside of the big band sound. We're going to have a little bit of an acoustic set. And we talk about love and life, and the audience, you laugh and you cry and you have fun. And you leave feeling like you went to something that fulfilled you, and it gave you something to leave and go home and think about. And that's it, you know, kind of like going into your grandmother's kitchen. So the fundraiser is the launching pad for all our projects. So this is why we need people to come out to the show and support. There are tickets available at the Queen's Hall box office currently.
When is it?
So it's September the 24th, Queen's Hall from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Tickets cost $200. It's not expensive, it's affordable, even in this time. And you're gonna get a fantastic show. And that is that. And then you'll be engaging in the new brand of patriotism. The new brand of patriotism, I like to say, is where you put your money where your mouth is. So instead of looking at a child with a disability and thinking, oh, why don't they have access to schools, and why don't they have access to the type of healthcare they need, and you can support cause and effect and know that what we're doing now is future proofing to push for all of these things to come into play and happen. And so to me, that is the ultimate act of patriotism. Trinis love to party. You can come out and have a good time and know that your dollar is going to go toward a fantastic cause and future proofing for persons with disabilities. So that's that. My OMG moment. I thought about it because I knew when I was coming here, I said, I know they're going to ask this. In 2008, 5 o'clock one morning, I told my son I loved him. He is non-verbal. He's 13 now and he can't speak still, okay? But I told him I loved him. And he turned around and he looked at me dead set in my eyes and he said, I love you too. He didn't say I love you, he said, I love you too. And I froze and I looked at my husband and he looked at me and both of our eyes filled up with tears. But I didn't want to cry because I didn't want Isaiah to think that he had made me sad. But it was the most beautiful experience I had ever in life when he told me he loved me. And that was my, oh my gosh moment. So that was my OMG moment. So thanks everyone for viewing. Come out to Cause and Effect show. Check us out at the Queen's Hall, September 24th. David Rudder and I, 6 to 8:30 p.m., $200. Get your tickets at the Queen's Hall box office. God bless.